free will feels undeniable. Right now, you believe you are choosing to watch this video. You decided to click. You decided to stay. But what if that decision was already made before you became aware of it? Pause for a moment. Raise your hand in your mind. Imagine moving your finger. At what exact moment did you decide? This question has disturbed neuroscientists for decades. In 1983, Benjamin Libet conducted one of the most controversial experiments in modern neuroscience. Participants were asked to perform a simple task: move their finger whenever they felt like it. No planning, no countdown, just a spontaneous decision. While they did this, Libet measured their brain activity using EEG. What he found was shocking. A specific pattern of brain activity, known as the readiness potential, appeared about 300 to 500 milliseconds before the participant reported consciously deciding to move. In other words, the brain had already started preparing the action before the person felt they had chosen it. The brain moved first. Consciousness reported later. Think about what that means. If the neural process that initiates action begins before conscious awareness, then what exactly is the role of consciousness? Are you the decision maker, or are you the narrator? Libet himself suggested that while the brain may initiate actions unconsciously, consciousness might still have a veto power. A brief window to stop the action, but later, experiments complicated things further. In 2008, researchers using fMRI scanning discovered they could predict a participant's decision up to 7 seconds before the person became consciously aware of it. 7 seconds. That is not a tiny delay. That is an eternity in neural processing. The brain seems to prepare decisions long before the conscious mind catches up. So when you feel like you are choosing between coffee or tea, speaking or staying silent, clicking or scrolling, what is actually happening? Your brain is running unconscious computations, evaluating probabilities, weighing past experiences, simulating outcomes. And only after the process reaches a certain threshold does the conscious mind become aware. It feels like control, but it may be awareness of a process already in motion. This does not mean you are a robot. It means your sense of authorship might be constructed after the fact. Consider split brain experiments. When the corpus callosum connecting the hemispheres is severed, the left hemisphere often invents explanations for actions initiated by the right hemisphere. The brain creates a story to maintain coherence. It would rather fabricate meaning than admit uncertainty. Now apply that to everyday life. You justify decisions after making them. You explain emotions after feeling them. You create reasons for behaviors that began unconsciously. The narrative self might not be the commander. It might be the press secretary. But here's where it becomes deeper. From a predictive processing perspective, the brain is constantly forecasting actions before they happen. Motor commands are simulated internally before execution. The feeling of intention could simply be part of that predictive model. Your brain predicts that you are about to act, and that prediction becomes the feeling of will. So is free will completely fake? Not necessarily. Some neuroscientists argue that free will is not a single moment of conscious command. It is a distributed process across networks. A gradual accumulation of neural activity shaped by personality, memory, genetics, and environment. In that sense, you still matter. But the you is not a tiny voice inside your head pulling levers. It is a biological system operating below awareness. This changes how we think about responsibility. If decisions emerge from unconscious neural processes, then blame and praise become more complex. Yet society depends on the assumption of agency. Maybe free will is not absolute freedom. Maybe it is constrained self-organization. You do not choose your genetics. You do not choose your childhood. You do not choose the initial impulse. But you might influence long-term patterns through reflection and learning. The illusion may not be that free will exists. The illusion may be that it operates the way you think it does. When you say, "I decided," what you might really mean is, "My brain reached a threshold, and I became aware of it." This does not make you powerless. It makes you biological, and perhaps more interesting than you imagined. Because if awareness lags behind neural preparation, then consciousness may not be the driver. It may be the observer of a process already unfolding. The unsettling part is this. Right now, as you process these words, your brain is forming responses before you consciously articulate them. You are not waiting to think. You are already thinking. And only then do you become aware of it. Free will feels real because the story feels. There is another layer to this problem that makes it even more unsettling. If the brain decides before you become aware, then what is the feeling of intention? Neuroscientists suggest that intention might not be the cause of action, but the brain's prediction that an action is about to occur. In other words, the sensation of "I am about to move" could simply be the brain informing itself of a process already underway. Think about how you speak. When you form a sentence, you do not consciously assemble each grammatical rule. You do not manually select every word. The sentence emerges. Only after it is spoken do you reflect on what you said. Language feels intentional, but the construction happens below awareness. The same appears to be true for decisions. Brain imaging studies show that patterns of neural activity gradually build up toward a threshold before a choice is made. This is called accumulation to bound dynamics. The brain gathers internal evidence until it crosses a tipping point, and then the action is executed. Consciousness may simply be the moment the threshold becomes noticeable. This challenges the traditional idea of a central controller inside the mind. There is no single command center issuing orders. Instead, there are distributed neural networks competing, integrating, and resolving signals. Decision-making is less like a king giving commands and more like a parliament reaching consensus. And sometimes, the parliament decides before the announcer reads the verdict. But here is something even more interesting. When people are given more time to reflect, activity in the prefrontal cortex increases. This area is associated with planning, inhibition, and long-term reasoning. That suggests something important. While the initial impulse may arise unconsciously, reflection can reshape future impulses. You may not choose the first thought, but you can influence the patterns that generate future thoughts. This is where the idea of free will becomes more nuanced. Instead of a single moment of conscious control, free will might exist across time, not in the instant of impulse, but in the gradual restructuring of the brain through learning, habit, and self-awareness. Neuroplasticity shows that repeated behaviors physically rewire neural circuits. Meditation changes connectivity. Therapy changes response patterns. Training changes impulse strength. If the brain decides before awareness, then awareness may still shape